Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajim, Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, Assalamualaikum, Ji Ayanu, Pakhairagale, Ni Hao, Chunashumme, Washmale, Ohio Gonzaimas, Guten Morgen, Hola, Bonjour, Privyet, Kaifa Hal, Hale Shuma Chatore, Ahlan Wasal Marhaba, Buna, Mucho Gracias, Swabi, Balli Kare Aya, Hosh Galden and Ayasayo, Huyamora Chi, Watochi, Halyot, Kalimera, Khairutan, and a very warm welcome to everybody who's tuned into PTV World and watching World this morning on a lovely Friday morning over here in Islamabad. With me, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very lucky that I've been joined by my very well-learned colleague who happens to be Miss Haja Satti. I happen to be Shahzad Hasan Khan, and we hope and pray that everybody out there is doing wonderfully well and that you're ready to kickstart your day with us. But first things first, hello Haja, assalamu alaikum. How are you feeling today?
Walaikum assalam. Thank you so much, Jazakallah khair, for introducing me. It's a fine Friday morning in Islamabad. Jummah Mubarak to you and everyone who is watching out there. And Shahzad, I was having this conversation with my parents sitting on our balcony, and they were talking about how in their younger days, after 15th of August, they would witness that the temperatures would drop. Especially evenings would become very pleasant, and after a very long time, we are having such sort of weather patterns again. Sure. Obviously, we are going to develop this conversation on the weather and especially the abnormalities that we witnessed in the last couple of years, or maybe in the 5 years, that how there was an variation in the weather patterns, and how in April we experienced some of the very hottest days, climbing up to 50 degrees centigrade, that too in Islamabad, which is a very moderate city. It is located in the bulk of the Magala Hills, and that too we have a dam here, so after 2-3 days we would witness or receive rainfall, but certainly there were some abnormalities. But I'm really glad that the weather patterns are going back to what they were, or a normal thing. But again, there's another very much a longer scare in the global world about the monkeypox, about it spreading. And usually these sort of viruses, they are centered in the Africa, but when they are traveling outside the continent, so WHO has also declared an international emergency on the global health, and so that wider resources can be assembled and they can be helped to curb this rising trend. But why is there so much scare regarding the monkeypox? Why there's so much conversation? We will unroll this conversation. We would dissect the concept, which are the vulnerable groups that are more at the risk of this particular condition, disease, virus, what do we call it, and how can we protect ourselves from this particular condition. We are very glad that we have been joined by a consultant dermatologist who also happens to be an aesthetic physician from the Maroof International Hospital. She happens to be Dr. Safia Habib. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saiban. Thank you so much for coming to our show.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you for inviting me.
Dr. Saiban, so one question that intrigues me is, we have chickenpox, we have monkeypox. Why do we derive these names from the animals? What is the correlation with that?
It's basically, sometimes these viruses are first, when they are first discovered, that is the animal in which it is discovered, so it's named after that animal. Like this monkeypox was first discovered in 1958 in some monkeys which were kept for research purposes in Denmark. So it got its name from there.
Right.
Exactly. And in addition to this, what we have done is that we have taken out an animation for better understanding of people, because it's still novel. You know how we used to refer to coronavirus as novel, it's still novel. A lot of people not know about it as well, and there are 2-3 cases that we've heard about over here in the country as well. So what we have done is that we're going to play that animation, and we want you to make us understand what it really is. So Mpox, ladies and gentlemen, let's get awareness about it. Can we please play it, Mr. Producer? Let's do it. All right, this is monkeypox and awareness. Please go ahead, Dr. Saiba.
Okay, so this is this animation is about a virus. It's about like a rectangle square kind of virus, and it was obviously, that I told you before, it was discovered in a monkey, so it's got its name from there. And it's similar to the orthopox viruses. It belongs to the group of orthopox viruses, the same group that also had that smallpox. So smallpox, these monkeypox, variola, they are like.
And over here, what we do see is that do we refer to it as we call it dane, or do we refer
what
to
exactly
it as
is monkeypox, right? So can you explain it to our audiences there, and why is there so much scare regarding it?
It's a viral infection which is contagious. That's why it's scary. Okay, because it can spread through your talking, through droplets. It can spread by touching the sores or the skin lesions. It can spread from like having skin to skin contact, or from mouth to skin, mouth to mouth contact, and through sex also. So, and it can also, the pregnant ladies can give it to their unborn children. So that's why it's a scary one.
But Dr. Saiba, if it belongs to the same family as the chicken pox, so I don't.
No, it's not the same family. It belongs to the smallpox family. Okay. So the vaccine which was developed for smallpox in 1970s and 80s, when people used to get smallpox, they were vaccinated for that smallpox vaccine, and that's why this virus was not very virulent then, because people already had a little bit of immunity against smallpox, and because this virus is similar to that one, so they were already immune. But after like 1980s and something, when smallpox virus was done and smallpox was finished from the world, so people were not getting it. So it's like again a new thing now.
Dr. Saiba, the pressing question that the entire globe is dealing is, will it be a repeat of COVID-19? As a doctor, what would you like to say about this condition?
Yeah, that was a quite new virus. Nobody had like an idea about it, but because we had it belongs to the same family, so we had a general idea about it. Okay, and it's not that kind of deadly right at the moment, but if you don't treat it when it happens, and if you don't take the precautions, it can become deadly.
All right, and in addition to this, while we are speaking of it as well, I think it's very important, of utmost importance, that we kind of refer to it, because people now have a major understanding of what COVID was.
Yes.
Now imagine if COVID was referred to as a sort of influenza, right?
Yeah.
You know, which was a virus that you can get.
Yes.
But unfortunately, if not treated in time, it can spread to your organs.
Exactly.
You know, we have seen a lot of patients with atrial fibrillation. We have seen people with a lot of lung issues as well, and whatnot. So do you think, as a dermatologist or as an aesthetic physician, is it only restricted to skin, or can it move to your organs?
It happens, it starts with the skin lesions, okay? But sometimes the symptoms can happen without the lesions. The skin lesions can happen with the disease. They can start together like the flu-like symptoms. The fever, the sore throat, the body aches, the back pain, these are all the symptoms of the disease. And with that you can get the lesions on your skin. But sometimes lesions can happen before or sometimes with the other symptoms. Treatment is necessary, and it's important to deal it in the first stage, because otherwise it can cause complications. Like you said, it can spread to other organs of the body, like your brain, your heart, your lungs. It can cause pneumonia, it can cause myocarditis, it can cause encephalitis or urethritis and proctitis. Okay, so that's why we want the patient to be treated if they don't have enough immunity to fight with it.
So when we speak about symptoms, you know, we were even sharing them on the screen. So there's exhaustion, there's muscle aches and pains as well.
Yeah, there's fever, and backache, and like flu-like symptoms, that is body aches.
But it's still confusing, you know, because with all of these symptoms, you cannot certainly decide that, okay, you know, it might be monkeypox.
Yeah, but then you will have additional skin lesions. That will become a rash, which starts as a flat rash, flat sore, then it becomes vesicular, like it becomes a bulla or a like kind of blister. And with the progression of the disease, that blister can develop into a pustule, pus collection in it, and then it scabs off. If the immunity is, the person's immunity will fight it off, and it will dry, and it will leave a scab, and it will fall off.
And for people who do not have good immunity, what would you suggest for them? Because a lot of people over here are on immunosuppressants, you know, they do not have good, they have autoimmune diseases.
Yes.
Do you think they can fight that off?
And Dr. Saiba, what about the vulnerable groups out there? So who do you think are more at the risk of getting this disease, and how can they protect them from this condition?
The protection is same for all the people, whether they are vulnerable or they are not, whether they are immunocompromised or immunosuppressant. You have to protect yourself, because you don't know what kind of immunity, what level of immunity you have. So the best thing is to, if you have the symptoms, isolate yourself and tell people that I have these symptoms, I am not going to come out and meet you. Don't go into public places, crowded places where you can spread the disease. Also, if you have sores on your body, on your skin, cover them with cloth or wear clothes so that you don't let don't accidentally touch someone or someone else touches you. Also, you should stay at home, have good nutrition, rest, and it will be very well.
But there is no particular vaccine that can treat that, right?
Yeah, they have developed the same vaccine is in progress, and if you if those vulnerable groups who are on immunosuppressants or they have immunocompromised system, they can have that vaccine. It's only available on like for special cases. It's not to be taken by everyone.
So do we have it? Do we have to get it before we get monkeypox? Number one, and number two, because we were talking about how to protect other people. God forbid if you've got it.
Yeah.
I think what we really need to talk about over here is how do we protect ourselves, so that we don't get it, So is it, do we have to wear masks again? Do we have to wear full clothes and gloves and sanitize and whatnot?
Exactly. If you don't want to get it, ask the person. They should basically, it's coming from abroad where people are going together like for Hajj, or where people are in like in groups. They're from all the countries. People are coming from everywhere. They mingle and they contract this disease. Okay, so if someone is coming from abroad, they have a travel history to all those endemic areas like Africa, Congo, and all Nigeria and places like that. You should be then careful about meeting those people. Also, if you have contact with them, then you should isolate when you have the symptoms. Okay, and the precautionary measures are the same. If you have it or you think the other person have it, you should wear a glove, keep it sit at a distance, and then obviously all the rest.
I think we are all familiar with these sort of precautionary measures because COVID taught us well. But Dr. Sahiba, now let's move on to another point which you were mentioning, that it is a contagious disease and it's spread through droplets. So do you mean to say that the humid weather is very conducive to the survival of this bacteria? And since we are going through that humid weather, it's monsoon season, so how do you think that we should need to protect ourselves?
Yes, this weather is not very good for like skin. It's humid, it's hot. And the skin, it's hot and humid, so the skin barrier is not at its fullest. Okay, it's compromised. So if you have scratches or the barrier is broken, you can easily contract the virus. Okay, and also when it's humid, the particles, the droplets that when we talk are coming out of our mouth or sneezing or things like that, they remain suspended in the air for longer time. So if you are like sitting closely within 1 to 2 feet, it's not like 6 feet like corona, it's about only 1 to 2 feet. So that's better. You can contract them. So that's how it spreads. So weather obviously plays a role, and in this weather obviously you shouldn't go out and compromise yourself unnecessarily in crowded places and with people like
and I think that the sort of weather that we are having is, I mean, for the couple of past days it's a nice weather, but generally we don't even want to go in the congregation out there because of the humidity and sweating. But Dr. Sahiba, when we talk about the monkeypox preparedness, right, as a doctor, someone who is very well versed in this field, how do you see a preparedness out there? Do you think that we can tackle this condition, or this scare is just unnecessary, the hype that is created on the media?
No, it's not unnecessary. It's better to be prepared than to face the consequences. I think like we in the hospitals are telling everyone, and whoever comes into the hospital or goes out of it, we make sure that they wear masks. The healthcare professionals like doctors and nurses should all the time be wearing it, because they are the first people who come in contact with the sick people. So also it should be, I think it should be like corona times, they should give you masks at the entrances of malls and crowded places, shopping areas and places. That's the first line of defense. If you obviously if you are covered and you are not coming in skin to skin contact, then that's the only way that you can get it. Also I should also tell you about the vulnerable groups. Those are pregnant women, because their immunity is low. Those patients who are on steroid treatments for their kind of these on immunosuppressants. So that group. Also little children, kids or infants, they have less immunity, and very old people, they have less immunity. So if you are old, or you have a little child, or you are pregnant, or you are on immunosuppressive drugs, you should take the precautions. because it's
And
better.
I think the best precaution would be just to stay at home as well. I think, you know, people really need to be careful. But in addition to this, there's one more thing which I would love to add over here. Unfortunately, it was summer vacation time. We've seen a lot of children
lots of people
getting a lot of chicken pox this time around as well. And, you know, so I was driving just yesterday and I had a friend of mine who was a doctor, and he said that, you know, that there was one of these children who was on the streets as well. And he had like these pox as well. And he said that, you know, the child has got chicken pox. So most of the time we're so unaware of the fact that, you know, that somebody might be going through some sort of illness and that can be contagious. And, you know, so I don't really think that, you know, it will be a good idea every single time to roll down your window and kind of have a conversation. So how do you think, you know, when we speak of chicken pox as well, do you think that this is a similar family over here? Because, you know, this is where the doctors can get confused too, you know. You know, if it's a skin lesion, it can be chicken pox, it can be measles, it can be monkeypox now. So how do we differentiate?
Okay, whenever your child or a person gets a skin rash, don't just rush them to a general physician or to, obviously you have to take them to a hospital, but it's best if you see a dermatologist, because he or she is the person who can differentiate between all those similar looking danas. Dana hai, theek hai? So we can tell the difference between chicken pox and monkeypox and measles and bacterial infections or fungal going on your skin just by looking at them, by looking at their morphology. Yes, and then we can have few tests done to confirm our diagnosis, and then you can, obviously you can have the confirmation whether it's chicken pox or monkeypox.
Now let's move on towards the treatment as well, you know. So in addition to this, while we're speaking of it, sorry Hajra, you know, but you know, imagine that with chicken pox, I've seen, you know, because my daughters went through it as well, you know, so we did see that, you know, that they wanted to itch it, you know, they wanted to put some creams on it, you know, so that it becomes a bit soother. Now with monkeypox, there's a bit of scare that whether it's curable or not. So first things first, you know, is it curable? And if it's curable, how do we make it possible for people, for the vulnerable groups?
Okay, like any other viral infection, there are no like confirmed things. Is tarah ki nahi hai. You can always take medication for your symptoms. If you have fever, you can take paracetamol. If you have itching, you can take an anti-itch medication so that you don't scratch the lesions, you don't itch, and you don't spread it to other people. Okay, and also because when you itch or you scratch, you can cause super added bacterial infection to those simple looking danas, and then when they get superimposed infection, they can leave a scar. All right. Also,
and can that scar be for life?
Like people, those people in the old days when they had like smallpox on the skin and the face,
they used to pop it.
Exactly. So that's how you prevent it. Also, what was I talking about? Sorry.
We were talking about, you know, the what we really need to do in terms of treatment for people who are vulnerable
so
groups.
You take the medicine, the symptomatic medicine, and then you have to take rest. Obviously, you have to have good protein diet to build your immunity, and in addition to that, if you have like a immune compromised system or those people, then you can go for that vaccine or IVIGs. Okay, sorry, not vaccine, IVIGs. All right, and we can do the test PCR to confirm it, and those very vulnerable groups can get that thing. Okay, and we have antiviral medications, cidofovir and tino, something Virimot, which can be used or we can be taken orally. That is the first line of treatment.
But madam, with viral,
I'm sorry,
no problem.
Shahzad, but when we are talking about the protection, right? So I think COVID has taught us the plenty of masks around. So there were blue masks, and then there were K95, right? KN95. For the commoners like us, I mean, doctors are very well versed with these sort of masks. But when we talk about the COVID protection, there was this conversation that those blue masks were not very effective responders against the COVID, right? Because they had this ability that COVID can spread. But when we are talking about monkeypox, and when we are you're talking about isolating yourself, do you think these sort of conversations are integral part of the monkeypox preparedness? What sort of mask do you think we should wear? Is blue one effective, or we need to have more like a strong line of defense against it?
Yeah, I think any kind of mask is better than not wearing anything.
Right,
okay,
right.
The healthcare professionals, doctors and nurses, and all those working in the hospital, they can wear the simple that blue, green mask, whatever the color is, white or black. Some people made it in white and black and all those colors. They are basically the same. It should be 2 or 3 layers, and that's effective against this thing. Okay.
Right.
Exactly. Only, you know, if that helps. But, you know, while we were talking about the, you know, treatments for monkeypox, you know, there's one more important aspect which I would like to touch upon, and that is that, you know, when we speak of the treatments, you very correctly said that it's a viral illness, right?
Yeah.
But for any viral, we certainly do not have any specific medicine. You know, way in Pakistan, we have a tradition of giving a lot of antibiotics. You know, it's probably not a good idea as well. But whenever we go to a doctor, the doctor will certainly prescribe you, you know, 1 or 2 sorts of medication, which might not help. The viral will go away itself, right?
Yeah.
You know, so how do you think that any ghar ke totke can help with monkeypox as well?
I certainly
I don't know
recommend.
if that's the right question to ask a dermatologist or not, but yeah, still why not?
Yes, I would not recommend ghar ka totka. Always go and see your dermatologist. That should be done. I don't think there is a shortcut to it to go for ghar ka totka and then when it's over the
beta isme haldi laga lo, beta isme ye laga lo.
No, that won't work.
Okay.
That can, in fact, it can be dangerous because in the meantime you'd be spreading it to so many other people, right? So go to a dermatologist. They can prescribe you a local medication to be applied on the sores. They can give you antiviral, which is effective against this virus, and that is tenovirmat and things like that. Okay. And then only the supportive measures. Okay.
And I think Dr. Saiba, when Shehzad was talking, he mentioned a very important point between the lines, and he talked about the antibiotic, right? And in Pakistan, we are having this conversation that there is an antibiotic resistance coming up, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think we have witnessed those effects on ourselves as a commoners, as a layman, because you know, usually during this seasonals when we used to get affected, if we had a fever, we would you know, heal in 2 or 3 days, but now it almost takes 10 days or 15 days to recover back. And even if we have a flu, right, so it takes a lot of longer time. So do you think it is related to the antibiotic resistance, and what are some of the very strong sort of consequences that are propping up because of our self-medication, because of this antibiotics extreme, what do you call, tendency of going for the antibiotics?
Exactly, you have told the answer in your question. Okay, you have, these are the factors that have caused antibacterial resistance, antibiotic resistance. It's because of self-medication. When you have simple flu, it will take like, it's a viral infection, the flu and things, and you shouldn't take antibiotics for that. Okay, it's for bacterial infections.
Right.
So if you have simple flu or you have fever, it's because of so many things, and you shouldn't start popping in the antibiotics. Okay, so self-medication. Then when you go to quacks who are not qualified doctors and people to consult when you have an illness, they simply don't know the cause of it, whether it's viral or fungal or bacterial or whatever. They'll just advise you an antibiotic.
Yep.
So that also, and then over a period of time, the bacteria and viruses have also become stronger.
Yep.
So they don't really go away with those medicines. So these are 2-3 factors: self-medication, then the without any indication if you are getting it, and the strength of the bacteria or viruses have also increased over time.
I think Dr. Saiba mentioned a very important point. She talked about the quacks, and we have seen this tendency within Pakistan, especially in the rural areas. And it's not just restricted to the rural areas, but we see this phenomena thriving in the urban centers, that how people flock towards these fake spiritual healers, these quacks, I mean all of these fake sort of doctors who are prescribing a lot of things that are not conducive to your health care. So Dr. Saiba, why do you think, you know, people are flocking towards these fake spiritual healers, and you know, why is there distrust of the Western medicine out there? Do you think the situation is getting better and we need to have those conversations around?
And there's an addition to this as well, you know, because most of the time you go to doctors and they would certainly prescribe you this one particular medicine which they might be getting commission for as well. Yeah, so please go ahead.
That's a very controversial topic. I'm not going to go into that.
But that's what it is.
Okay, I'm going to answer your question first. It's about education.
Okay.
Our lot is not educated. That's the main factor. All right. then they are poor also. They don't want to spend a little more money on going to a doctor when they can get like their disease diagnosed and treated by a quack or a spiritual healer or for like less money. All right.
जो मैं रात को चांदी के बर्तन में पानी पी लेना चांद की तरफ मुंह करके,
लेकिन वो they don't ask for money, but you eventually the patient gives them in some other form like
bakshish,
मुर्गी ले आया हूँ,
वर्षद,
ये ले आया हूँ, whatever. So this is like poverty, lack of education, and then there what should I say, sometimes it because of the yes, the society, the people that we are living in, the cultural values also, okay, because we believe in like spiritual healing and Quran and things like that, and many uneducated, what should I say, like peer fakir, they are taking advantage of that thing. The quacks are not qualified, but they have to earn money for their livelihood, so they have started that practice, and then on top of that people are uneducated where to go when they have this kind of
exactly. But thank you so much, Dr. Safia, for being with us. It was lovely to be in conversation with you, and I think that I would certainly want to thank Maroof International as well. They've always taken a step ahead as well, because I don't think that anybody's spoken about monkeypox. Thank you so much, for being on our show. For everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, towards the end of the day, it's us who are more responsible. I think we really need to make sure that, God forbid, if we do feel that we're exhausted, we're getting chills, there are backaches, let's just be at home, all right? Let's not rush outside. Whatever you have to do, make sure that it's at halt, stay at home, relax, look at yourself first. And if you think that you're doing better, why not? Go ahead, do whatever. But this is that one thing that can actually make a difference for you to stay back home. And this is one thing that we will be discussing, because there's another illness in terms of rains over here in the country. We want rain full of rahmah, but imagine what happens is that if there's too much rain, there's a lot of flooding. We'll be talking about that too as well. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Good morning.
Welcome back, and before going on to the break, we were having an interesting discussion on the monkeypox preparedness. And when we talk about the preparedness, I mentioned in the start of the program that we will further develop the conversation on the weather patterns, because this is the subject, climate change. It is, I think for the coming decade or so, it will always remain very pertinent, not just to Pakistani society, but to entire world. So when we talk about the preparedness, when we talk about the flood preparedness, since it's the monsoon season going on, how to make ourselves more prepared. And alhamdulillah, this year we did not witness any sort of worrisome incident when it comes to the weather patterns. But again, we cannot say that certainly about the coming year. So how can we make sure that when it comes to the urban preparedness regarding the floods, we want to develop further conversation on that. So without any further ado, we have been joined by someone who is very well versed in this area, and his knowledge, his grip on the subject always amazes me. I'm very glad that we have been joined by Ahmed Kamal Sahab, who happens to be the chairman of the Federal Flood Commission. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and thank you so much for once again coming to our show.
Walaikum assalam, and grateful to Pakistan Television for giving me this opportunity to talk on the issue.
Right, and sir, so I was talking to my father, and he talked about that how when he was young, so after 15th of August, we will witness that monsoon season would decrease, and like in our Punjabi weather patterns or calendar system, we say that the Sawan ke baad Bhadra aata hai, and that is a more, the evenings are very pleasant, and we are sort of witnessing that same weather now. So do you think it's a abnormality in the weather patterns, because for the past 5 years or 6 years, we have seen that the weather patterns were changing a lot. Winters were shrinking, summers were expanding, but this year it's changed. So is it a worrisome sign? Is it a good sign? As someone who is an expert in the field, what do you have to say?
Thank you very much. I think that the most important point which we should be aware of is that we are in the direct grip of the climate change.
Okay.
And when we say that the climate change is going to bring this thing on ground, but we are actually witnessing that. You may recall in 2010, it was perhaps the worst ever monsoon which hit the northern areas.
Oh, yes.
And then it was the reverse in 2022 when it started from the south and then it hit finally on the 25th, 26th and 27th of August on 2022,
Right.
the Kabul as well as the Swat rivers. Talking about there is any change or like that, please you will be amazed to note that we are witnessing so much changes in the temperature variation in the northern areas. If tomorrow it is 10° up, today it is 7° down.
Oh yes.
And you may see that in about 4 or 5 days ago, we were receiving about almost 400,000 cusics of water in Tarbela.
And
Today it is 200,000 cusics. So because of the change in the temperature is falling down, and then the melting has reduced, receded. So it is an up and down sort of
And
a
sir, since you've
phenomenon.
spoken about the northern areas as well, so we do have visuals from Gilgit-Baltistan. You've said that that we've received the worst monsoon rains in the northern areas as well. So we would want to share that. But in addition to this, what I would like to speak about is obviously climate change is for real. We do know it for a fact. But we do see that there's an increasing trend of urban flooding these days. Now, imagine that if you go back in time, we've seen over here in 11, there was cloud bursting, there's a lot of encroachment, there's not proper places for water to go away as well. How do you think that we really can focus together to make sure that urban flooding does not exist in coming years?
As a matter of fact, I should be very honest in talking on this issue. Our urban expansion is not as per the land use planning.
Okay.
And it is long being discussed that why we do not have very accurate master plans and land use plans available for our urban areas in particular, because now the movement of the people are from the rural places to the urban places. Back in 2014 and 15, there was an exercise undertaken and we had a guidelines prepared on multi-hazard vulnerability and risk assessment.
Yep.
And the idea behind that was to undertake risk assessment of each and every district of the country, so that whichever places where we are going to have some construction, some other activity, we are very sure that they are going to be hit by flood or by any other disaster. But unfortunately, we have not completed that exercise, and now we are focusing and we are trying to pursue with those departments that they should at least undertake those multi-hazard vulnerability and risk assessment exercises there. I should quote one example. In Karachi, there was one hospital which was completely flooded, and it was built in the depression or depressed area.
Right.
So who has given that approval to for the construction of that hospital? It is the job of the urban unit of the relevant provincial government as well as the city district government.
Yes.
So the federal government provides policies and all that. Federal government provides the strategic guidance. It is basically the provincial governments, the provincial departments, and thereafter the third tier, the districts, who have been given this responsibility. That's why during my last few talks, I have continuously been saying that forget about everything. Let's have some sort of a very strong coordination from top to bottom and from bottom up.
So are we saying provincial and federal needs to come together?
Come together. The federal
union
government
councils,
Yes, federal government should not have any encroachment sort of a thing into the functions of the provincial government or the district government, but they should be there. We should be there, the
Oversight.
federal government for the oversight.
Sure.
And for sharing of whatever good practices which probably are not known at that level.
And sir, since you are talking very passionate about how we need to be more prepared in terms of the urban preparedness, and obviously when we talk about the climate change, the element of how the Western countries have responsibilities, a huge chunk of responsibilities in creating such sort of environment that is leading to such sort of disastrous consequences for a third world countries like us. We cannot neglect that, but let's not also forget that the human hand in creating such local human hand in creating such sort of situations. So there are two questions. Number one, where are we in terms of early warning detection system? Do you think we as a state have learned from 2022 flooding? And secondly, when we talk about the urban preparedness, do you think this immense propping up of the concrete jungles across the cities we have seen, when we know that concrete is a material that prevents, that's not a very porous material, right, that prevents the water to get absorbed, and you know, in terms of the flooding, the water would generally get absorbed in the soil and it would go down, but when it's concrete there, we don't see that phenomena happening, and that is why there is immense urban flooding in the cities. So number one, where are we in terms of the early warning detection system? And secondly, how can we curb this phenomena of the concrete jungles, because the economic activity is linked with that? How can we detangle it and remove the element of money from that entire business venture?
Very good, very pertinent question. Let me share with you the example of Rawalpindi, Islamabad.
Yes.
2001, there was a historic rain, 610 millimeter in 10 hours. There were about 74 casualties, and there was a damage to the tune of about 60 million rupees. And then there was a Japanese government who came forward, and then they proposed that there can be a flood forecasting and warning system for Leh Nala.
Yes.
So that was put in place in 2007, and since then there is no issue whatsoever with regard to any flooding or any casualty. By virtue of that system, the lag time, which earlier was only 10 minutes for the people to take care of their valuables and all that, that has increased to 90 minutes. So such sort of system is at least needed for Karachi, Lahore, maybe for Peshawar, Hyderabad, Sialkot like. And for that very purpose, in our National Flood Protection Plan 4, which very recently has been submitted for the approval of the government in CCI, there have been 20 cities which have been, you know, worked out to be the most vulnerable with regard to the urban flooding, and the measures like how well the early warning system can be placed there, how well the storm drainage system can be addressed, how well the overall drainage system of that country, of that city, which basically is the open drainage system. When there is a certain level of water it reached, the water takes the, you know, backwater flow effect, and then the water, you know, coming out from the open drains and all that. So those all are required to be taken care of. Above all, our people, they must be told the civic sense, they must be given all those learning. Let me share that, and let me propose from this program. The government should undertake, the government is taking very many other measures. Why should not a sort of a national campaign on disaster management, and how well the people should get themselves acquainted with that, and how well a single person is aware of that, what duties he has to or she has to perform, and once there is a disaster, how well he or she is, you know, supportive to the next and to the next and to the next one. This is the way that Japan has got, you know, so much of resilience. They are being hit every day, not by the
earthquakes,
but
there's so many things,
and all that.
Yes,
So
yes,
that is what is required, and also there should not be so many parallel activities going by one department or the other department. I have been doing some sort of a pleading for this, and I am going to say this once again, that we have got the National Disaster Management System in Pakistan in the form of NDMA. The subject of flood management, the subject of meteorology and all that should be dovetailed in such a manner that it should be a grand national disaster management system, and there should be a certain, you know, sense of responsibility of, you know, punishment or reward or everything.
But Kamal Sahab, again, how can we de-link the economic activity which is associated with the propping of concrete jungles? So for example, we are living in Islamabad, and I think you can also relate, I can also relate. Islamabad used to have a very amazing forest cover, but that is being slaughtered in the favor of the housing societies. And when we talk about the housing societies, obviously we know that the concrete is an essential element in that, right? And if you stop those, or again, then there's going to be a lot of capitalist voices that are going to say that, you know, you are stopping the economic activity, but we don't see the amount of damage it is doing to the environment. So how can we have a more productive conversation, more utilitarian conversation?
That's why, you know, that's why I was saying there is no land use plan available.
Okay.
There is no land use plan guidelines there.
Right.
And once there is a certain housing society, they get the permission and then they have a certain plotting and all that. Why should not we in our legislation make it mandatory that whatever housing society that is going to be developed, they will have such sort of a green structures as well,
Right.
such sort of a tree and such sort of a biodiversity arrangements made in that particular area. And similarly, we are having so much of a talk about that every household should have a one tree planted and all that. Such sort of activities should be given much more attention in the school level. The kids should be taken out, the kids should be taken to a certain place, and then they should be given the saplings to and to put on ground.
And there needs to be preparedness as well. Obviously, we used to go through these drills as well, that God forbid if it's going to be earthquake, what's going to happen and how the children really need to move. But sir, two small questions before we wrap it up. And number one is, you've spoken about National Disaster Management Authority. It's more of an post-disaster authority, unfortunately, but we certainly do not have any authority working for the preempt measures, number one. Number two, when we speak about Alhamdulillah, Shukr Alhamdulillah, after thanking Allah Almighty, how were we able to avert all of the flooding this time around as well, where the rain broke all records in Lahore as well, in 44 years. And number three, do you think that in coming days we certainly will be focusing on having vertical living rather than having more spaces to live, or houses or farmhouses and whatnot?
And green vertical
Yes.
living.
The vertical living or the vertical sort of expansion is also have their demerits. We have talked a lot about the heat wave and all that in Karachi and like that. It is all because when there is a lot of vertical buildings and all that, there is a some sort of a heat enclosure made there, and that creates or increases the actual heat or the temperature. When you talked about how we can avert the flooding and all, look, number one, we can't fight with the nature. We should try to have 100% protection. Where it is not possible, we should try to mitigate.
Okay.
Once we do all these two, then we should be very well prepared. Now let's come to the measures. There is an example of Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. There was an incident of lot of flooding there, and then they have got a underground storage.
It's almost raining every day over there.
Every day.
Yeah.
So there had been and there have been so many such plans in our National Flood Protection Plan 4. We have included so many this, and we have written to the Vasas of all those cities that please come up with the projects. We are not mandated to put those projects on ground. You are mandated to do that, but we would like to support you by forwarding your such proposals to some external donors, to those agencies which are now much more inclined to have a city resilience or urban resilience. There is a campaign going on globally that urban resilience is something which is going to be taken us this way or that way. So it can only be fought by virtue of some arrangements. Look what good was done in Lahore some years back when there was some underground water tank made. At least in that particular area there is going to be no flooding once there is any water there. Why should not we have? We talked a lot about channelization of Lai Nala in Rawalpindi, Islamabad. We have not done it to date. There are so many small streams which are becoming part of the Lai Nala. Why we are not putting them stone paste? Why we are not covering them and addressing those? So these are the things which have to be taken care of by the relevant departments. Please, sorry.
And no other parallel activities as well. Yeah.
No other parallel activity as well.
Thank you so much, Kamal Saab, for having this wonderful conversation. And water conservation is a particular area that is always going to be relevant for the Pakistan. And Pakistan, I think, is a country of paradoxes, where we do not have a water at one point of time. There's a water scarcity, then there's so much water that we are unable to manage it. So how can we reconcile both of these concepts, the water scarcity and the immense flooding? This is questions that we need to raise, and we need to have this constant conversation. And not just conversation, we need to walk and talk on that. Thank you so much, Mehmet Kamal Saab, for having this wonderful conversation, for having a very insightful discussion, and having a grip on this area. And we will continue to have those discussions. And with that, we are ending our program. Until next time, it's a goodbye. Allah Hafiz and good morning.